What's really going on, everybody? Back again with another episode, as always, joined by Mackenzie and Henry. This is our 84th episode. Before we get into it, be sure to follow us on all of our social media. That includes on Twitter and Instagram at WRGOPod. Be sure to like, subscribe, listen, and comment on whatever your favorite streaming platform is. That includes, as always, Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and YouTube, where you can watch all of our videos in full. Mackenzie and Henry, how are you guys doing?
I'm doing okay. It was a nice warm day here in New York, so it was all good.
Henry?
Uh, I'm here. I'm alive. uh, I'm sorry to be so dry, y'all. It's just been a long day for me.
We need high energy, high energy. It's the end of the day. It's almost Friday.
It is. So let's get into it. So we are going to start, as always, with our food for thought. The first news is student loans. So Biden has recently announced an extension in the student loan moratorium, which will now pause payments until August 31st. It was initially set to end May 1st, after it was once again set to end on March 1st, after it was once again set to end on January 1st.
This man don't just cancel this stuff. Like, come on, dude.
So since 20,
Because I've seen a article that said no, but the only recourse for this is people being mad that they pay days back.
and we're going to get into that. So it says, according to the Federal Reserve, it says since 2020, which is when it was originally suspended in April, it said borrowers have found that they've saved nearly $200 billion. Some senators, like Elizabeth Warren and the Democratic leader Charles Schumer, he has said that he's now pressuring Biden to just cancel $50,000 per borrower, which apparently some have argued that he has the constitutional authority to do. So I guess, what does the continued extension signal about Biden's strategy? Because I guess, as someone who's in politics, to me it just says that he doesn't know what to do, and that his staff doesn't know what to do, and he's kicking the can down the road until he has something that he can okay, now we do this because we can, but it doesn't seem like he knows what to do, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel completely the same way. Yeah, I feel like it's just showing you don't know what to do. You don't want to push people too far, I guess, or constituents or people who might not agree with your reasoning to just completely cancel it or do the $50,000. You don't want to piss people off. That's what it's giving. And I don't know, I feel like I just saw a poll, and I will say I don't really try to pay attention to the polls and stuff, but his ratings were going down or were low. So I'm curious there, is he waiting for that to be his last final, thing that he can throw in there? Okay, well, I'll cancel it now if y'all just, re-vote me in. I mean, seriously, because it's well, what's the point of continuing to delay it?
I mean, naturally, you would think it would be the
That's
inverse.
my question, though.
You think it'd be the reverse. You think you wouldn't do something this big if you were unpopular. That just, you don't have the will to do it, and who's going to want to. I guess, Henry, here's a question for you that I've been thinking about. Who's on the opposite side of him wanting to cancel it?
Well, that becomes the question of the people being mad. Yeah. And I can only presume that because me and you, we were talking about how right now the only people who benefit with this the whole thing getting pushed back is wealthy people or people who are able to pay on their loans, being that the interest or whatever is canceled. Yep. So for me, I would only presume or think that maybe Republicans, but then again, no, it's always the Democrats that be them penny pincher.
You think so?
People. That's what I said. I don't know. I really don't know why bro won't cancel the student debt. I don't get it.
On the surface, it's a big thing to do. I mean, he's basically, if he were to do it, it's basically him saying okay, we're just going to wipe out the debt of, billions of dollars. That's not a small thing to do. I think it's the right thing to do, but politically, that's just not something that you could just say, okay, we're just going to $10 billion. Okay, you don't have to pay that. You actually have to have a lot of stuff in place to do that, which is hard. But I think, to your point, Republicans just don't want him. Democrats don't seem to have the will or the ability to just kind of say, we're doing this at all costs and we don't care. I think they're kind of like reading the room of like, we don't think now's the time. It's like, well, it's never going to really be the right time to do it.
Right, and that's that.
Yeah, and I think
Because like this COVID relief money that just came out of nowhere that they're trying to lock people up for, like that was over. Like not a lot of people got money, and per what I've read and understood, the relief money added up to be more than student loan debt. So like, if they can pull that out of thin air to give people to rejuvenate the economy. Why isn't the rationale like, okay, once we cancel student debt, more people will have free money to boost the economy, get homes or whatever, like save more.
I mean,
it helps.
That would naturally be the thought, but I don't think rich people think that way. I think they think of it as like, these people are getting something that I had to do, or that previous people didn't have to do. They think about it as like a have and have nots, and then they're probably often thinking about it to justify their mind of people who look like us and people who don't have the financial ability to just eat money like that, saying, well, now anybody can do, it's like, it's a very dumb argument. But like, I'm surprised that like, it doesn't seem like Biden's ever going to do this, so I'm shocked he hasn't at least. I would probably appreciate it more if he was just kind of not playing around with it and just said, we're going to pay all the interest. I think that's at least like a sensible thing that makes sense to me, but like, I just don't think anything's going to happen from this. Mackenzie, is anything going to happen?
I mean, you mentioned interest. Honestly, like I would still be ticked if they even pay interest, because I'm just like, it's still kind of like
something though. Yeah, I think that's where I'm at.
It is something, but I still would be like, thanks, because y'all barely had that, I guess. Like, okay, but it's still like, I still have to. But the only thing is, I was going to say maybe their intention is to keep us on payroll. Like, at the end of the day, we're still having to pay that back or whatever. But then them pausing it, just like, it just defeats the purpose, because it's clearly y'all don't need this money. Y'all been operating for years at this point without the money. So it's not a necessity. I don't know. I mean, to me personally, I feel like Biden hasn't done much, and I feel like this would be pretty major.
I think it would be too.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know.
That could be the one thing he championed, because that was the one thing or two things he came in rah like, oh, I'm gonna do.
No, he did not. Like, he was not rah. He was not rah about it.
He actually was. He was saying.
He was.
I feel like student debt and COVID were his two big things. But did he
say like Elizabeth Warren has clearly stated, I want.
He literally said he was canceling student debt, and then the third one, which he got done, was he was going to nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court. Those were the three promises I remember: getting COVID handled, situated, getting student debt canceled, and getting a black woman on the Supreme Court. Which the Supreme Court, good job, I guess.
Don't do that. That's more than a good job. That's more than a good job. Don't even do that, because we'll save that for another day. But black men was rah this on Twitter this week about not having a space, and look how you just cut down that black woman for being on the Supreme Court.
Whoa.
Don't try to be little.
Don't do that.
Don't try to be little.
But rather, I think it gets to the point.
I'm not belittling the fact that a black woman is on the Supreme Court justice. I would never do that. Like, that's amazing. She you know what I'm saying, she gonna do her thing as much as she can. But that's just functionally
within his control. Like, it's
not, like, I was just saying, like,
proactive. It's just kind of like, you either do or you literally don't. Like, it's
right, you know what I'm saying? And I guess that's not even really on him. That's on the Senate and Congress, because Obama put up like 3 and they blocked all of them.
Yeah, and I think the last point about this, I think it looks worse. Clearly it's possible to do this, because I think I don't know the running tab of money that we've given to Ukraine in the last month, but it's a lot.
It's been a lot.
So I think it's a matter of I think there's clearly no room for someone to say we can't do this. It's just a matter of we won't.
Yeah.
And I think that's a different conversation. Speaking of a different conversation, I think we thankfully have not had to talk about this. I'm glad our podcast schedule did not realign when this happened, because I think the amount of bad takes on podcasts that clearly don't have an agenda like ours that have talked about this have been terrible. But we haven't talked about the Will Smith thing, and I think we're going to take it from a different approach of largely talking about not just the action, but the reaction to the action, and largely other things that have happened largely that ended up with Will Smith being banned from the Oscars for 10 years. Celebrity reactions, and I think I think as a podcast we try to talk about how media works, and I think Mackenzie, you're probably the best person to talk about that. So I guess can you just talk about largely how like the media has framed this? Because I think it's just very interesting compared to other similar things that have happened, which are
Yeah,
a lot.
it's been framed very much so like shame on Will. I can't believe Will acted like this. This is a place of integrity and we're these great people. And I can't believe he came into this space and did that. And that's how I received it. And we're on a podcast talking about Black people. I just feel like what I heard was like, how did this N word come in here, disrespect
Mm-hmm.
our space? He should be even happy enough to even be here. And how dare you? How dare you get up on stage and slap?
There are a lot of for them folks in the back that's gonna be like, "Oh my God, no, girl, yes, that's what
Yeah,
y'all acting
no. And
like."
like just like so that's how I feel like the media has been portraying it. But as far as like it's also been very interesting though. Like, I mean, I guess we all know this, and as Black people, we know this, but it is interesting seeing the takes from celebrities and the takes from white
Mm-hmm.
celebrities versus Black celebrities.
Terrible,
It's
terrible.
crazy. It really is crazy because I mean, we all seen this laugh, and most of the people that I know, black people, some Black people, older Black people, was saying like, okay, he was doing too much, but I don't know, a slap in the mouth for saying something crazy is not that wild. It's not that wild.
You just keep it
You
pushing.
just keep it pushing. But Amy Schumer talking about traumatized. And I remember y'all's fave Zoe Kravitz had the nerve to come up there and say something. And but it's also like Hollywood. This is where you draw the line? Really?
Yeah, and I think
This
Right?
yeah,
Because
this
I'm
was
pretty sure
it?
y'all done caught folks in the bathroom doing
Drugs.
drugs, all type of stuff. Then on top of that, when Me Too movement happened, I'm pretty sure there was a nominee
Yeah.
that was listed on
Yeah.
that dang on movie. So like, bro, if y'all don't watch out playing with my man's, cause like what y'all trying to do is take away the fact that he's won his first Oscar, and that wasn't his
Yeah.
best performance.
It wasn't.
yeah,
We can also say it
yeah.
also wasn't.
It wasn't his best performance. So like they really trying to play my man right now, and I don't appreciate that. Especially to your point, like I think if we want to talk about like as a whole, us as Black people validating ourselves in this entertainment, music industry, whatever. I feel like artists, like music artists, have for the past couple of years kind of like discredited the Grammys of like their validation on who they are, the success they have as an artist, and I think, I mean, yeah, you want the accolades of it, but like actors and actresses maybe should get on that same like
I was thinking
bandwagon
that too. I
because
mean, but
Yeah.
bro, it's for this to be Will's first Oscar. That let me know these people not checking for us.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't think. I mean, and I think that's the thing that gets.
We even had a question about Samuel L. Jackson the other day where he got an honorary Oscar. Samuel L.
I
Jackson.
I
mean,
think
it's
that's a
just
different question
it's
in
just
terms of the two, personally. But
go
I
ahead,
mean,
Noah.
maybe. No, I think it's a different question in terms of one, like the actual kind of career of Will Smith. But I also think like yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm just on that. I mean, I've been very public about how I think the Grammys are terrible because they don't recognize us. They recognize us either way too late. They choose to recognize largely like the wrong people. Like to compare it to the Grammys, like John Baptiste won the album for best. He won the award for best album, and like he is a good musician, but he is the most kind of like culturally white acceptable black musician who is out there. Same with like Aloe Black. Like
Mhm.
people who we know are not listening to Aloe Black and John Baptiste. They're not moving the culture in any type of way. But they are culturally acceptable to the white mainstream. And I think that's like they're checking the box of saying like, oh, we nominated a black person, they won. That's great. But like the actual black people are like, who is that? Like who?
I was literally about to say
And
who
and and
won what
and
now?
Tyler the Creator. Like, I'm sorry, I feel like he falls into that. Like, Black people do like Tyler the Creator, but for him to win Best Rap Album compared to all of the people like a Future or like a Drake or like people who have really been
There's a
moving
lot that
the
goes into it
culture,
before that.
yeah,
Yeah.
Tyler the Creator for rap, he fixed the boxes. Oh yeah, he's cool. He's kind of different. I
Mm-hmm.
understand him. Like it's very much that, and I think Even though I do love Tyler the
Yeah,
Creator, I do, and I
I do
do,
too. But I think that's honest though. I think
yeah,
he crosses a lot of cross cultural things, and when it was just us listening to him, when he was kind of like really weird,
yeah.
it wasn't really
When he
thought
was
about
eating
that.
a
But I also think
cockroach,
That wasn't
when he was
enough.
eating a
yeah,
cockroach,
Yeah.
yeah, on
yeah,
the Yonkers video. But I
yeah,
think like to kind of put a bow on it, I think the most kind of appalling thing that I saw was like everybody clearly connecting violence to blackness,
yeah,
where it was like people were too quick to just kind of be like, oh, like,
Write him
yeah,
off.
or no, I think just in terms of connecting that action to then represent everything about black people, when that's just like, there's so many instances of how that's not the case, and that like white violence is clearly just accepted,
yeah,
whereas people vandalizing because a team won the Super Bowl, we accept that as a form of public discourse that's just kind of accepted. But this one-off moment between two individual people is now a reflection of how the violent nature of black people,
yeah,
and I think that's like the media's probably biggest
yeah. That's what it
flaw.
was. No, that's why
Yeah,
I was
it's like
saying
perverse. It's perverse.
it just felt like I can't believe these N words were in our space
Mm-hmm.
acting like that. Look at how they act. Just like.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
But Harvey
So
Weinstein hasn't been banned for 10 years. Like
Hmm.
if we're taking a stance,
You can
this
keep
man
naming
could
them.
really go to the Oscars
Shit,
and win
Mel
an
Gibson.
Oscar
Yeah,
next
all
year.
of them.
Like that's why it's like that's very
It's
crazy.
like shit. Johnny Depp probably was
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
so moving on now to the to the big fact. Of course, I'm sure everybody who knows we obviously have a large listening contingent in the 5 boroughs and in the New York tri-state area. So on Tuesday, a gunman opened fire on a Brooklyn subway train, ending with 10 people shot and more than 30 injured. I think the first thing that I'm going to do before we kind of give our pre-context, I think, is talk to Mackenzie, who is our resident New York. So I guess what was kind of the feeling um, in New York? I think this, on the surface, this event is crazy. Like, it's nuts.
It's really like it was really scary. Like I will say, I don't like to say New Yorkers are resilient, but that's not the first time some crazy stuff has happened on a train. But this part, it was just like, really, you just opened fire on a train at
Yeah.
8:30 in the morning? And I guess my biggest takeaway from that is obviously that was a major tragedy, and I hope no one was injured or whatever the case may be.
And no one died,
Yeah, no one died,
which is good, which is very
which
fortunate.
is great. But my thing is like I need people to really understand, like in New York, especially with it was before the new mayor, I will say that, but every weekend, if you live in a major, not even a major station, there are police cops there. They're on duty. They will catch you jumping this, focusing on people trying to jump the turnstile or whatever. So my thing is for this to happen at 8:30 in the morning. I don't know the full situation. I'm just thinking like when I first read the story and he's planting bombs. Did that happen at Monday morning? Because 8:30 in the morning from Brooklyn, from Sunset Park, Brooklyn, just to for people living in that neighborhood getting to the city, that's rush hour.
Yeah,
That's a
that's a
lot of
lot.
people trying to get to the city. So there had to be somebody there. I feel like I'm just assuming. So when I'm reading the story, I'm thinking he's planning the bombs. It's taking a few days to do this or whatever. And if it took days coming off of a weekend when there's cops there, that's just telling me that the cops are once again focused on the wrong thing. Like, and he was in an MTA or a construction vest or whatever. Granted, who knows who's to say that somebody didn't find them suspicious, or if that's a suspicious look or whatever that even may be. My whole thing is with NYPD and just cops in general. Y'all are here focused on the wrong things, but y'all cannot stop a mass shooting from happening, and it's right under your nose. And the person who caught it was a corner store guy who just randomly saw them or put two and two together. The security cameras didn't work in the subway, but
Yeah.
yet
and and it's worth noting that the person who did this was a Syrian immigrant. Like, it's like you can't kind of write something
And
that's
let
more
wait,
ironic than
because
that.
when you say that, I think that validates some people's ideology on what terrorism looks like, and like, you get what I'm saying? So like when I say, I'm sorry, bro. I'm so sorry. I forgot to turn this thing on Do Not Disturb. My bad, y'all. Shut up. See, Mac.
This episode has been brought to you by Steve Jobs and Apple. So thank you. I just muted Henry's mic.
Yeah.
There we go. Anywho, Henry has been banned for 30 seconds
Yeah.
after that. I think the interesting thing, at least about this, I think the story can go a lot of different ways. I think, and I think, Mackenzie, you can probably speak to this a little better as someone who lives in Harlem, but like there is a lot of crime going on in New York currently. Like I think they said in the Bronx, they had like 13 or something shootings that Tuesday that were outside of like just that one thing in Brooklyn. But I don't think people talk about it. People don't talk about things like that, or like how do we actually reduce gun violence on like an everyday level.
Yeah.
It's like this mass shooting happened and we choose to do nothing, but like there are all these other things that are happening that it doesn't even seem like, and I think you could speak to this, that like Eric Adams really seems to be doing anything. It's like, let's stop crime, but let's not do anything else to stop like the or actually give people like a working wage or like real social services, or like it's just like let's just crime and like it's just like it happens jail, and it's not like we're back into like the same like.
But it's also like, but what is the crime though? Like you're so focused on the crime of losing $2.75, and that's how much the MTA is, and not the crime of a mass shooting or actual violence happening in the city. That's what I'm really irritated about, because it's just like there's real crime happening, and instead of focusing on the real crime, you're trying to stop somebody from stealing $2.75, but yet you walking home with a good paycheck. I don't get it. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think Henry jump in. I mean, I think it just gets to the point that like policing nowadays is a political issue.
Yeah.
With
what is policing? I asked my mama that the
what
other
is
day.
Policing?
I literally was like, "What do police do?" She's like, harass people, and I was like, literally that part, because like they don't solve crimes,
and they're not preventing the crimes. That's another
they're
thing.
Not preventing the crimes.
Yeah, and I can at least, and I'm not to be on the side of police, because Lord knows that's not my MO here. I think there's other entities that also just need to be called out, where like obviously like crime is happening and police need to figure out better ways to combat it. But like at the end of the day, if there are just guns floating around, the police can't really do anything outside of like, let's just find them. Like at some point, Eric Adams needs to have an executive order or something, or the city council needs to do something, or the mayor or the governor needs to do something. Like there needs to be legislation in place that really just makes this stuff harder to obtain. And
but low key though, New York is like actually getting a licensed gun is very hard in New York.
It's like in DC.
Most of the East Coast now. We ain't gonna talk about the South. East Coast.
Well, that's what I'm about to say. These folks just let these people do it with no background checks. They don't care. They say shoot each other.
Basically,
but that's the problem, is that people get them from like North Carolina, South Carolina,
and drive
just drive straight up. And I think like I don't know the way to combat that, especially since it's like a state to state thing. But that clearly says like. That's the problem, to be honest, because we're looking at gun issues, race issues, some issues like just certain stuff it's a federal thing. Gun issues, that's not you know what I'm saying, specific to one geographic location. Guns in America is a problem.
Yeah,
it's problematic. Period. So they should probably approach it on a federal level so that states have to follow certain protocols.
Well, that's a conversation they've been having that conversation forever. Because like you said, it is a federal situation now, and I feel like everyone knows that, but they're just not getting anywhere with the NRA. Like it's just not going anywhere.
And I think it also increasingly makes like DC has really tough gun laws and New York has tough gun laws, but those become less relevant when other states don't, because it's kind of like. It's only as strong as the weakest state. And if there are states that just let you pull up and cop one, it kind of makes states like New York pointless when someone can just cop one and ship it up or drive up. So
Atlanta about to see an influx, huh?
Bro, chill out. Like,
now that's a mess. Let's talk about it.
Bro, it's been 2 shootings in the past 2 weekends. Like, I don't even want to go outside.
I'm just like well, I guess we haven't really. Go ahead, Noah, introduce the next week, because I'm like, we haven't even introduced the topic.
Well, this is, I have here on our agenda, it says Atlanta makes the case for reparations, and then I said, Mackenzie, I'll let you explain.
Wait, did y'all watch the episode?
I watched clips and I read a bunch, so don't at me
Yeah,
right
I
now.
kind of like
You
side
weren't
through
supposed to
it.
say that on the pod and add us right now, but I mean, it's okay.
I looked through it
So,
a little bit.
for my
If,
listeners, if you are an
if you saw
Atlanta
the doc, I was
fan,
trying to avoid that.
which y'all should be Atlanta fan. No, like seriously, this not tonight's episode or whenever y'all hear this. The last episode I saw was about reparations. And I won't say I liked it or I enjoyed it, but I just thought it was a very interesting take on what reparations would look like. And essentially, the episode, there was some law passed, and if you were a white person that was connected to people who or your ancestors owned slaves, you had to pay part of your check or you paid whatever the back pay was to the black person. So now let me finish. So this girl Shanique, and I felt very close to this episode. Her name was like Shanique. I hate that they named her that. She was from St.
I did too.
Louis, and she she went up to the guy who owed her money, and now from now on, essentially like 15% of his paycheck, of every paycheck, has to go to her. And that was just a form of reparations. It was funny. It was a lot going on, but it was just, I guess, kind of seeing it from the white person's perspective, because his perspective was like he didn't know that he owned, like he didn't have any connection to that. He didn't know about his grandfather or great great grandfather. And he was like the white liberal, like, I'm not racist. I didn't know that my parents were doing this. But the thing that was very telling about this episode, and that I still need white people to really understand, is that it was only 4 generations back. She said my great 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 great. It's not that far removed. And then it's other things in the episode, because I was like, well, you could, that 4 generations back, you could connect the dots enough, especially as a white person. You can connect the dots enough and figure that out yourself. But the biggest takeaway was obviously reparations and just seeing what that would look like. And then 2, 4 generations ago, that's not that long. That's really not that long ago for me to be able to say 4 generations ago, you own my mother or you own my great great grandmother. That's insane to me. And I don't think white people really understand. There was a scene, though, that y'all do need to watch. There was a scene where one of the white people that was in the same situation that owed a lot of money, he understood that, because he said, for us, it's very far removed. Slavery is very far removed because we can move on with our lives. But for them, it is only 4 generations back. And they're constantly reminded that it's right there. Yeah. So y'all need to watch the episode.
I'm gonna watch it tonight.
I'll do the same. We encourage you all to comment.
But I'm gonna get
now,
my
I think that's
reparations.
what cool. Not cool, because in reality, let us try to tax them folks for what their ancestors did. That's gonna spark up them. Like, no, that's not gonna work.
But it was
for
just
real.
a law that was passed. And you know what, respectfully, if y'all watch the episode, like, I don't want something. I guess I could take something for your paycheck, but like, I don't even want that. Just give me the full amount in one check from the government. Because like, if you watch the episode, she was doing the most. Like, she was camping outside his house, showing up to his job. Like, I'm not doing none of that. Like,
so she was basically a bill collector.
Yeah, literally.
The thing is, how much is 10% of this man's check for real? Like,
well, he ended up losing his job. But no, like, some people was really like making like owed like $3 million type stuff. Like, it really just depend on how the cookie crumbled.
I mean, if you got the right, if you just happen to,
you got the right ancestry.
If you happen, or rather the wrong one, working you like a dog.
And then it's like she was doing the most, and if she wasn't like doing the most, but it still was telling 4 generations back, yeah, I'm gonna do the most. I can really connect the dots. I can see that woman or see my grandmother, grandfather on the plantation. That's not that long ago.
No, I mean, it doesn't take you that back to get to, I mean, all you literally have to do is get to like the late 1800s, really, to have like a connection where someone either grew up or once was. It's not that far removed. So the last thing we have here is anti-lynching bill. So recently Biden signed into law a bill that makes lynching a federal hate crime. Years ago, Henry and I discussed the failed attempt after some Republicans shockingly took exception to the definition and scope of the word lynching. I quote you not. This time the bill only passed with 3 no votes, which is still shocking in the year of 2022. The Equal Justice Initiative determined that Congress has failed to pass anti-lynching legislation almost 200 times. For context, this is a stat that I found. between 1865 and 1950, there have been nearly 6,500 lynchings that are known of. I don't think that encounters probably the ones that were not known of or the ones that happened and just no one really knew besides certain people. But there are 6,500 that have been documented and that can be traced. I guess my question is, are you shocked?
Bro, you said since when?
Since basically from 1865 to 1950, which goes to Mackenzie's case of it doesn't take that far back to get to 1865, and it certainly doesn't take that long to get to 1950. And that's when they stopped. So I can only assume that
allegedly
in the 1940s that there was clearly still a lot of this happening that people swept up. And I think and to Mackenzie's point, I think we think of this thing as something that happened in like the 1800s, but no, this was happening in the 20th century. Like, this is something that, like, you know, if you ask the right person's grandparents, they probably have a story of this happening when they were growing up. And they were probably like in the 1940s, which is crazy. But I think that gets to the point of like, this is not really like far off history. This is like, you ask a person and they can probably tell you firsthand about this stuff.
Yeah, that's crazy, to be honest. Like, it makes my stomach hurt for real.
I mean, Henry, I'm just thinking about you. Like, I'm sure if you asked family, like in Georgia, I'm sure someone has a story about something like this. I'm positive. Like, if you ask one of your elders or if you ask one of like your grandparents, like siblings or cousins, someone has a story of this happening, or rather knows a story that they were told directly.
Yeah.
Or through growing up. Like, it's not.
I was actually going through, like, cleaning out some closets, and I came across a picture of, I would say, my great grandparents. And I don't know. I asked my grandma, like, you know, who they were or whatever. I didn't ask directly if they were like slaves or whatever, but that picture, I wish I still had it. It was definitely giving. They seen some things. Like, it was like one of those black and white photos you could just see in the eyes, you know, just see like, you know, when you see them old photos, I feel like the eyes be just telling you so much. They
just tell you what's
happening.
And
they was in Mississippi, so.
Well, I was about to say, I don't remember the degree of how far back they were, but I've seen some of my ancestry with, like, they were slaves. Like, I know, like, my granddad, he inherited the farm he owned when I was little, and, like, he's Indian. So, like, if I really wanted to, like, go into that history of how, like, he inherited that for real, but he allegedly inherited from family, but I wouldn't believe that. Because I know, like, we also got land up in South Carolina where, like, my aunt vividly, like, remembers her uncle who was a slave or somebody like that. He was basically a sharecropper and was the main bookkeeper, so he was still bread, and he ended up buying like 9 acres of land in South Carolina. So yeah, like, I know firsthand, like, have heard stories, not firsthand have experienced, but I've heard the stories and seen pictures, and like, to Mackenzie's point of like just seeing the pain, you can smell the picture for real and just like imagine what they went through. So for me, it's a blessing to be alive, but it's crazy to see that like people are still like trying to play delusional, like this stuff doesn't happen or is not like a crime.
Yeah, or just like even on like a broader level, that like how that would still have an economic impact today. Like, you know, we as people are literally like centuries and generations behind the 8 ball, and how that, like, when people say like generational wealth, I think most people don't assume that like takes effect like way before our, like, even our grandparents.
Before our time.
Like, once again, y'all need to watch the Atlanta episode. They talked about all of this, like.
Well, boom.
But no, like that Atlanta episode, it's not that long ago, and and white people do need to understand that for us, it's really not. Like, it's very familiar, and we're also constantly reminded by it. We can circle this back to the Oscars. You don't need to be in this space. You look at how they act. Get out, y'all. And if you act up, you banned for 10 years. 10 lashes. It just very, very like we're still not accepted. We can put on a show for you, but then get out if you act a fool.
Right. Well, that's it on our agenda. Is there anything else we need to discuss?
Oh, there's so many things we need to discuss, but not enough time on the podcast.
LOL, nah, the world do be doing this thing, man. It's a lot of stuff going on.
Well, there it is. That concludes our 84th episode. Be sure, as always, to check us out on all of our social media platforms. That includes Twitter and Instagram at WRGO Pod. Be sure to like, subscribe, listen, and comment on any of the plethora of streaming platforms that we are on. That includes Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and YouTube, where we are going to try to drop some new and more interesting stuff. So with Mackenzie and Henry, as always, myself as Noah, signing out.
Yeah.